Hello class, this is Mike Nolan, and this is my multimedia presentation for week 6 of the MPA 594 Comprehensive Exam Seminar titled Concepts and Theories Not Yet Discussed in this Course. So some concepts and theories that were not necessarily discussed in detail in this course, but were discussed in other courses is organizational culture theory, motivation hygiene theory, and for the PSML, I have trait theory leadership and servant leadership. So what is organizational culture theory? Well, it attempts to explain the behavior within an organization, and it also attempts to account for some differences among different organizations. It provides a description of how members live and make sense of the world together. And it also provides a lens through which its members can interpret and interact with to make sense of reality. In addition, it helps to explain patterns of behavior and thought that characterize individuals and the group with which they are associated. It has a focus on values, attitudes, and beliefs. Some misunderstandings of organizational culture is that cultural variations are often the cause of major and minor misunderstandings as groups come in contact with one another, and that culture within the organization may hinder an organization's progress in the future. A question associated with organizational culture that could be posed is, what are the 3 common characteristics of organizational character? And that would be it's shared, intangible, and affects human behavior. As for the motivator hygiene theory, this is psychologist Frederick Hertzberg's theory. And in this theory, he set to answer the question, and he wanted to know what factors created job satisfaction and how it impacted the employee's motivation. He called these factors that increase satisfaction motivators. Some motivators could be considered, these are things like achievement or recognition, or it could be the actual work itself, having that mission or purpose just to participate in work, whatever that work may be. It could be considered motivation. The responsibility of having work, and advancement and growth. The factors that led to dissatisfaction, he coined those as hygiene factors. Hygiene factors are commonly company policies, level of supervision, relationships with supervisors, and not only supervisors but with peers in the organization, work conditions, and salary and security. If there were to be a question posed on Hertzberg's 2-factor theory, the motivation hygiene theory, one thing that I found interesting about this is that Hertzberg's findings is that just addressing the cause of dissatisfaction itself, in itself, it does not automatically create satisfaction just by addressing the issues of dissatisfaction. So for the PSML, I have trait theory leadership and servant leadership. Trait theory leadership is somewhat similar to the great man's theory, which is that great leaders are born. However, while trait theory of leadership is somewhat of an early assumption that leaders are in fact born, and due to this belief, they possess these certain qualities and traits that are better suited for leadership. So this theory often identifies behavioral characteristics more than focusing on the great man theory, in which saying these great leaders are born. It focuses on the traits that these great leaders have and they possess, with the idea that if we can understand and develop and mimic these traits, these can aid to our ability to become better leaders if we assume these traits. A question that could be posed surrounding this is, what theory does the trait theory leadership piggyback off of? And this is very closely connected to great man's theory of leadership. Now, for servant leadership, this is a philosophy in which the main goal of the leader is to serve the people, not himself or the interest necessarily of the company always. This is much different from traditional leadership, where the leader's main focus is thriving the company or the organization, or maybe his own self-interest. And a servant leadership, this leader shares power and he puts the needs of the employees first. And he also works to help develop his people so that they are able to perform as highly as possible. A servant leader inverts the norm in which he puts the customer service associates as his main priority. Instead of the people working to serve the leader, a servant leader recognizes that he is serving, in fact, the people who he has been entrusted with representing or leading. A question that could be posed on servant leadership is what leadership styles are unlike servant leadership or are similar to servant leadership. A somewhat similar leadership model, but not exactly identical, is a transformational leader. And this is not a top-down leadership. This involves working together. So in a transformational leadership role, the leader works with the troops, not necessarily as a servant leader, identifies himself as someone who works for the troops. Servant leadership is unlike transactional leadership, where people are doing what you say because you have a transaction. You are their employer, you have a transactional agreement that they will perform the task, and in return, you will pay them. That is transactional leadership. So, my sources here on organizational culture theory, I went back to our previous courses and I was able to utilize a lot of the PowerPoint presentations and information on Blackboard from previous courses. For motivation hygiene theory, although there was plenty of that in our previous Blackboard coursework, there's tons of great information that I found on YouTube that really condensed the information into small 3 to 5 minute videos that made her extremely user-friendly. For trait theory leadership, I went to the golden source there, Quizlet. Quizlet had quite a few different flashcards on leadership with specific areas dedicated to trait leadership. And then for servant leadership, we didn't use a lot of it in this review, but in a lot of the previous courses we used it, so I'm sure we're all familiar with it. It's Crash Course. Those great 5 to 10 minute little videos, and there was one on leadership with a portion of it directed specifically to servant leadership. So that's my presentation. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and I look forward to watching your presentations as well. Thank you.